Kayla Chen had never seen so many different kinds of beings in one place before, though. Amphitheater stretched upward like a massive dome, and thousands of students filled the crystalline seats that curved around the central stage in perfect, spiral sum. Students had scales that shimmered in colors she had no names for, while others floated in containment. Fields filled with swirling gases, a few looked almost normal until they moved and revealed joints that bent in impossible directions. Kayla sat between her assigned orientation group, trying not to stare too obviously at anyone too. Her left sat something that resembled a collection of floating crystals that hummed softly and occasionally chimed like wind chimes. To her right was a massive creature covered in dark blue exoskeleton plates with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner red light. She was one of only 3 humans accepted into the Galactic Advancement Academy this cycle, and right now she felt very small and very alone. The stage below brightened as a figure emerged from the side entrance. Professor Velkith looked like an octopus had decided to stand upright and wear formal robes. Its tentacles moved with graceful precision as the professor approached. The central podium and the translator device in Kayla's ear crackled to life. "Welcome, students, to your orientation week." The professor's voice was surprisingly warm. "Despite the mechanical translation, before we discuss your academic programs, we must address critical safety protocols, eh?" Holographic display materialized above the stage, showing a rotating planet covered in violent purple storms. "The galaxy contains many classifications of worlds," Velkith continued. "Class 1 worlds are garden paradises with minimal environmental challenges, while Class 12 worlds are what we call Deathworlds." The hologram shifted to show a planet that looked like it was actively trying to kill anything on its surface. Lava flows competed with ice storms. While the atmosphere itself seemed to be on fire in some regions, death worlds are exceptionally rare. The professor explained with obvious concern in their tone. "They represent environments so hostile that survival requires extraordinary adaptation." Kayla leaned forward with interest. This was actually fascinating in a morbid kind of way. "Let me outline the characteristics that classify a world as." Class 12 inches, Velkith's tentacles moved across a control surface, and text appeared beside the rotating nightmare planet. "First, extreme and unpredictable weather patterns that can shift without warning." Kayla thought about the summer thunderstorms back home in Texas, where sunny skies could turn into tornado warnings within an hour. Second, the presence of persistent predators that hunt prey across extended periods. She remembered the documentary she had watched about wolves tracking elk herds for days, and that wasn't even considering human endurance hunting. Third, regular exposure to unfiltered stellar radiation. Wasn't that just called going outside on a sunny day? Fourth, constant exposure to aggressive bacterial and viral organisms requiring robust immune responses. Kayla frowned slightly. Every kid got sick sometimes, and that was just how bodies learn to fight things off. Fifth, significant gravitational stress requiring enhanced musculoskeletal structure. The professor continued listing characteristics while Kayla's frown deepened into genuine confusion. Sixth, atmospheric composition. That would be considered toxic to most civilized species, including reactive oxygen. Wait a minute. Seventh, the presence of megafauna large enough to pose existential threats to sapient populations. Kayla's hand shot up before she could stop herself. Massive blue-armored being next to her made a sound like grinding rocks, and several nearby students turned to stare. Professor Velkith paused mid-sentence, and several of their tentacles curled in what might have been surprise. "Yes, Student Chen." "Sorry, Professor," but Kayla felt her cheeks getting hot as thousands of alien eyes or equivalents focused on her. "You're literally describing Earth." The amphitheater went silent. You could have heard a pin drop if pins made any sound in the acoustic dampening. "Field, I'm describing your homeworld." Velkith's voice carried clear skepticism. "Yes." Professor Kayla stood up because sitting felt wrong for this conversation. "The weather thing. We have hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, droughts, and they change all the time." She was on a roll now and couldn't stop. "Persistence, predators. Humans used to hunt by just following animals until they collapsed from exhaustion, and we still have wolves and big cats that track prey for days." The crystal being beside her chimed in what sounded like alarm stellar radiation. "You call that sunlight, and people deliberately expose themselves to it for recreation. Kayla noticed that Professor Velka's skin was shifting to a pale green color bacterial exposure. Professor, we have bacteria in our digestive systems right now, and millions on our skin, and we need them to survive. Someone in the upper seats made a sound like a deflating balloon. Gravity on Earth is exactly what our bodies adapted to, and our atmosphere is 21% oxygen, which I'm guessing is the reactive oxygen you mentioned. Kayla took a breath and delivered the final point in megafauna. Professor, we have whales in our oceans that are longer than most of the ships. In the landing bay, and we used to have even bigger dinosaurs, the silence that followed was somehow even deeper than before then. The amphitheater erupted into chaos. Students were talking over each other in dozens of languages that her translator couldn't keep up with. A massive armored being next to her had stood up and was backing away slowly. The crystal student was vibrating so fast they were nearly invisible. Professor Velkith raised several tentacles calling for order, but the noise continued. Silence. The professor's voice boomed through enhanced speakers. Chatter died down to frightened whispers. Student Chen. Velkith's tone was very carefully controlled. Are you stating that your species evolved on an unregistered class? 12 Deathworld? I guess so. Kayla suddenly felt very defensive. I mean, it's just Earth and we call it home. More whispers rippled through the crowd. Someone in the back shouted something that translated as, how is she even alive? Touched their communication device and spoke rapidly in a language the translator didn't process within moments. Security personnel in white uniforms began entering the amphitheater. Student Chen, please remain calm, the professor said, though they were the one who seemed rattled. This is now a matter of planetary classification and safety protocol. Am I in trouble? Kayla asked, though she couldn't figure out what she had actually done wrong. Unknown Velketh admitted you are being summoned to Dean Hermith's office immediately, and Earth's classification status is being elevated to emergency review. Two security officers approached Kayla cautiously, like she might explode at any moment. Armored student she had been sitting next to spoke for the first time with a voice like an avalanche. The soft mammal comes from a death world. Their tone suggested this was the most surprising thing they had ever encountered. Kayla gathered her belongings while hundreds of students watched her every movement. As the security escort led her down the stairs toward the exit, she heard the whispers following her. Did you see her just standing there in normal gravity? She's been breathing the station atmosphere without filters. I touched her earlier and didn't die. Humans are from a class 12 world and nobody knew? Kayla walked through the amphitheater doors with her head held high, even though inside she was completely confused. She had come to the academy to learn about the galaxy and make humanity proud. She had not expected that simply existing would cause an intergalactic incident. The doors sealed behind her, cutting off the sound of 1,000 shocked voices. Whatever happened next, Kayla thought her first day at the Galactic Advancement Academy was definitely going to be memorable. Dean Hermuth looked like someone had taken a tree, made it walk upright, and given it eyes that glowed like distant stars. The ancient Archon sat behind a desk that seemed to be made of condensed light, and their bark-like skin creaked when they moved. Kayla stood in the center of the office while 3 security officers maintained a careful distance of exactly 5 meters. Student Chen, the dean's voice sounded like wind through leaves. You have created quite the administrative complication. I'm sorry, Dean, Callis said. Honestly, I didn't know Earth wasn't properly classified. Indeed. Charmuth pulled up holographic displays showing rapidly scrolling data. Our records indicate Earth was surveyed approximately 300 cycles ago and listed as Class 6 with limited sapient development, 300 years. Kayla did the math quickly. That was before we had spaceflight or even electricity, which explains the discrepancy. The dean's bark creaked in what might have been a sigh. However, this presents us with an unprecedented situation. More holograms appeared, showing what looked like emergency messages and incident reports. 47 students have requested immediate transfer to different orientation groups, and 12 have filed formal complaints about potential safety hazards. Kayla felt her stomach drop. You want me to leave? I did not say that. Hermuth corrected gently, but protocol requires that we conduct a full risk assessment before allowing a class. 12 Deathworld are to remain in the general population, so quarantine protective observation. That's just quarantine with better marketing. Kayla felt anger rising in her chest. Dean, I didn't ask to be from Earth, and humanity didn't ask to be isolated. And if Earth really is a death world, then doesn't that mean we deserve proper representation instead of being locked away? The dean was quiet for a long moment. The security officers shifted nervously. You make a compelling argument, Student Chen. Harmuth finally said, What do you propose? Kayla hadn't expected that question, but her mind raced through possibilities. Let me prove that humans aren't dangerous, she said quickly. We have standard fitness assessments, right? Physical capability? Tests. For recruits from Class 8 through 10 worlds? Yes. Then test me. Kayla stepped forward, and the security officers tensed. If I'm really from a Class 12 Death World, then your Class 8 to 10 test should be difficult for me, right? Let me show. Everyone that humans are just people. Dean Harmuth's eyes brightened slightly. Your logic is flawed, Student Chen, but I appreciate the initiative. They touched several holographic controls very well, and we shall make this a formal demonstration. And if you survive without injury, the evidence may support your continued enrollment. And if I don't survive, then Earth will be properly quarantined, and humanity will receive our sincere apologies. Kayla swallowed hard. When do we start? Testing facility was a massive chamber that could apparently reconfigure itself into any environment imaginable. Kayla stood in the observation area, wearing a standard academy exercise suit, while technicians prepared the first test through the transparent walls. She could see Professor Velkith, the dean, and a growing crowd of curious students. Crystal Being from her orientation group was there, humming nervously. So was the big armored student who watched with intense focus, beginning gravitational resistance test, a voice announced through the speakers. The chamber's floor lit up, and Kayla felt weight pressing down on her. It was like wearing a heavy backpack at first, then like someone was pushing down on her shoulders. Current gravitational force 1.4 standard, the voice continued. Kayla bent her knees slightly and adjusted her stance. The pressure increased 1.6 standard. She could feel it now in her legs and back, but it was manageable. Outside the chamber, several students were pointing and making what looked like surprise gestures. 1.8 standard. This was genuinely difficult. Kayla focused on her breathing and kept her core tight like her old track coach had taught her. Subject is maintaining stability, a technician reported with obvious surprise. Vital signs elevated but within acceptable parameters to 0.0 standard gravity. Kayla grunted with effort. This was like doing squats with her own body weight, but she could hold it through the window. She saw the armored student lean forward with what might have been respect. After 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes, the gravity released and Kayla nearly fell over from the sudden lightness test. Complete, the voice announced. Subject has exceeded expected parameters for Class 12 classification. The whispers outside grew louder. Test to involve something called toxin resistance. A technician handed Kayla a tray with several small containers. These compounds are considered lethal to most species, they explained nervously, but should only cause discomfort to Deathworlders, and please notify us immediately if you experience distress. Kayla examined the first container. It smelled familiar. Is this capsaicin? She asked the technician. Checked their display. Affirmative, and it is a severe tissue irritant. It's hot sauce, Kayla said, and then drank it. The technician made a sound of horror outside the chamber. Someone actually fainted. It's spicy, Kayla admitted, wiping her mouth, but humans eat this for fun. The second container was labeled as a neural toxinate. Smelled like her uncle's liquor cabinet. This is ethanol, she said, after smelling it carefully. Correct? The technician was backing toward the door. It causes system shutdown. In most species, humans drink this socially. Kayla took a small sip and made a face. Oh, this is really strong. The third substance was identified as a cardiac stimulant. Kayla tasted it carefully, then laughed. This is chocolate. Impossible. The technician checked their instruments. Theobromine is highly toxic, not to humans. Kayla ate the entire sample. We literally give this to children as treats. By the time she finished the toxin tests, the crowd outside had tripled in size. Test 3 was healing factor observation. A medical technician made a small, controlled cut on Kayla's forearm, while monitoring equipment tracked her response. Immediate platelet response, someone called out. Coagulation factors activating. That's just normal. Clotting. Kayla watched her arm with interest. For a Deathworlder, perhaps, the medical tech said. Most species require synthetic coagulants for wounds this size. They bandaged her arm and scheduled a follow-up observation based on projected healing. Rates the wound should close in 4 to 6 planetary rotations. Days? Kayla translated, "Yeah, that sounds about right." The final test was endurance. Kayla was placed on a machine that simulated running and told to maintain pace as long as possible. Students from Class 8 Worlds averaged 20 standard minutes class. 9 students might reach 30. Kayla settled into an easy rhythm and let her mind wander. She thought about home and her family, and whether they knew she had accidentally caused an interstellar incident on her first date. 40 minutes, the technicians started talking urgently at. 60 minutes, they began recalibrating their equipment. 90 minutes, Professor Velkith entered the chamber personally. Student Chen, how do you feel? Fine, Professor. Kayla wasn't even breathing that hard. This is about the pace I used for cross-country back home, and we'd run for 2 hours sometimes. 2 hours, Velkith's tentacles curled in disbelief. Is that good? Student Chen, the current record for this test is held by a Krath warrior at 73 minutes. The big armored student outside the window stood up straighter with obvious pride. Should I keep going? Kayla asked. That will not be necessary after the tests. Kayla was given water and taken to a recovery room. Dean Hermuth appeared within minutes. Well, Student Chen, you have certainly proven your point, and the data is quite remarkable, so I can stay. Yes, the Dean's eyes glowed warmly, and furthermore, the Council has requested that you teach a seminar on Deathworld survival strategies. Me. Teach. Who better to explain human capabilities than a human? Harmuth paused, though I suspect you will find the experience quite enlightening. As Kayla left the testing facility, she found a group waiting for Hertha. Crystal Bean chimed a greeting and spoke through a translator device. I am Piptic, and I apologize for my earlier fear, and you are quite remarkable. Thanks, Kayla smiled. And I'm sorry if I scared you. You still frighten me, Piptic admitted. But I find I am more curious than afraid now. The armored student approached and inclined their head with formal respect. I am Zarkith of the Krath Unity, and I have underestimated your species. Human. Kayla. Just Kayla is fine. Just Kayla, Zarkath repeated as if it were one word. You have earned my respect, and may I attend your seminar? Sure. Kayla felt warmth spreading through her chest. Anyone can come. As she walked back to her quarters with Piptic floating beside her and Zarkoth following at a respectful distance, Kayla realized something important. She had come to the academy expecting to learn about the galaxy, but maybe the galaxy needed to learn about humanity too, and if her childhood experiences could help build bridges between species. And every scraped knee, every sunburn, every time she had pushed through exhaustion suddenly felt like preparation for this exact moment. Earth was a death world. But that just meant humans knew how to survive now. It was time to show everyone that survival was just the beginning. The seminar room was packed beyond capacity. Students from every year and discipline had crammed themselves into a space designed for 30 participants, and Kayla counted at least 70 beings of various sizes and configurations. Some floated near the ceiling, while others had compressed themselves into corners. Several had brought recording equipment. I didn't expect this many people, Kayla whispered to Piptic, who hovered beside the podium. You are the first confirmed Deathworlder in Academy history, Piptic chimed softly. Of course, everyone wants to learn from you. Zarkov stood near the back with arms crossed, looking like a bodyguard, even though nobody had asked him to be there. Kayla took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. Okay, so I'm supposed to talk about Deathworld survival strategies, but honestly, I just call it growing up. She pulled up images from Earth that she had brought with her. First showed a beach with waves and children playing in the surf. A student near the front made a sound like a strangled gasp. This is a standard recreational activity on Earth, Kayla explained. We call it swimming or going to the beach. The water is uncontained, someone called out with audible horror, and it moves unpredictably. Yeah, that's the ocean. Kayla nodded. It has currents and waves and sometimes undertow, but kids learn to swim when they're really young. What are those gray shapes in the background? Another student asked. Nervously, Kayla zoomed in on the image. Oh, those are surfers, and they ride the waves on boards for fun. For recreation, Professor Velkith spoke from the side of the room. You voluntarily enter unstable water environments for enjoyment? Yes, Professor Kayla switched to the next image, and this is even more popular. The new picture showed a family camping in a forest and scattered around a fire pit with trees towering overhead and stars visible in the night sky. The room erupted in concerned chittering and whistles. You sleep outside. Piptic S crystals were vibrating rapidly without environmental controls or protective barriers. It's called camping. Kayla felt a smile tugging at her lips. People do it on purpose and actually pay money to stay in parks where they can camp, but the exposure, a blob-like student gurgled. Temperature fluctuations, atmospheric contaminants, potential predators, that's part of the experience. Kayla shrugged. My family went camping every summer, and we'd hike during the day, swim in the lake, roast food over the fire at night. You created uncontrolled combustion reactions. Zarkith leaned forward in close proximity to your offspring. We call it a campfire, and yeah, Kayla switched images again. Cooking over fire is actually one of the things that helped humans develop bigger brains. The next series of images showed various human foods cheese with visible blue mold veins, kimchi in jars with bubbles rising through the liquid agar with active culture. Labels a fancy charcuterie board. These are fermented foods, Kayla explained. We deliberately introduce bacteria into our food and then eat it. Someone in the back threw up. Kayla heard the distinctive sound and winced. Sorry, she said quickly, but seriously, this is normal food, and the bacteria are good for digestion. Good bacteria, a student repeated faintly. She says, good bacteria? Professor Velkith moved closer to examine the images. Student Kayla, are you stating that humans engage in controlled biological contamination of their nutrition sources? When you say it like that, it sounds weird, Kayla protested. But yes, and also we have bacteria living in our intestines right now, and we need them to break down food. We are aware of your symbiotic flora. Velkith's tentacles curled, but deliberately adding more seams. Excessive. Kayla continued through her presentation showed images of contact sports where humans deliberately collided with each other. Pictures of extreme sports like rock climbing, skydiving, and whitewater rafting. Video of a marathon where thousands of humans ran for hours by choice. Each new revelation brought fresh waves of shock. This is called American football. Kayla played a short clip. Players wear protective gear and try to carry the ball to the end zone. They are deliberately impacting each other at high velocity. Zerkoth observed, this is combat training? No, it's just a sport. Kayla paused the video, though I guess it does look kind of violent when you're not used to it. Kind of violent, someone muttered. She says kind of violent. The presentation continued with images from Kayla's own childhood. Her soccer team covered in mud after playing in the rain. A birthday party where kids ran around a park without supervision. A family photo taken at high altitude in the mountains where the air was thin. Wait, Piptic interrupted. Return to the previous image, please. Kayla went back to the muddy soccer picture you played. Physical sports during precipitation events, Piptic said carefully, in contaminated soil particulates and with reduced visibility. It was just rain and mud. Kayla laughed. That was one of the best games of the season. Your definition of best is concerning. Piptic chimed. The final section of her presentation covered what Kayla thought would be harmless pictures of people sunbathing at the beach, tanning salons, outdoor cafes on sunny days. This is radiation exposure, a student interrupted. Immediately deliberate, unshielded radiation exposure. It's sunlight, Kayla countered, and yes, too much is bad, but humans need some sun exposure to produce vitamin. Do you require radiation for nutrition synthesis? Professor Velkith's skin had gone pale green again. Sort of. Kayla was beginning to realize that normal human life was absolutely terrifying to everyone else, and also people just like being warm and sunshine makes us happy. Radiation makes you happy, someone said in disbelief. The chemical changes it causes in your neural tissue create positive responses. Another student added that is evolutionary conditioning to accept harm. Or maybe Earth is just nice when it's sunny, Kayla suggested. The debate raged for another 20 minutes before Professor Velkith called for a break. Students filed out talking. Gently amongst them, Celeste Bequick floated close to Kayla. You have fundamentally altered my understanding of survival. The crystallid said quietly, I have never met a being who considers hardship to be entertainment. It's not hardship when you're adapted to it. Kayla tried to explain, it's just life, perhaps that is the point. Zarkath approached with his usual heavy footsteps. You do not merely survive. Your world and you thrive within it. The field trip to the biodome was supposed to be routine, Professor. Velkith had arranged it as a practical demonstration of controlled environments. Biodome was a Class 4 environment with stable temperature, regulated humidity, and carefully balanced atmospheric composition. Kayla walked through the carefully maintained gardens with her seminar group. Pict floated beside her, commenting on the various plant. Speciesherkoth followed behind, still playing. Unofficial bodyguard to their students spread out across the biodome, examining flora and taking samples. Then the alarms started. Red lights flashed along the dome's support structures, and a mechanical voice announced system malfunction, environmental controls experiencing cascade failure, the voice said with calm urgency. Temperature dropping, humidity increasing, precipitation imminent. The first drops of rain fell from the dome's weather. System students screamed. Pipitic's crystals began fracturing with audible cracks as the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Arkith's exoskeleton locked up, and he stood frozen, unable to move in the sudden cold. A gaseous student's containment field flickered dangerously. Everyone panicked except Kayla. She felt something click into place in her mind. This was a crisis, and she knew how to handle crisis. Everyone stay calm. She called out using her soccer captain voice. Move toward the center of the biodome, away from the walls. The temperature, someone wailed. We will freeze it. Dropped 5 degrees. Kayla was already moving. That's uncomfortable, not lethal. We just need shelter until rescue arrives. She grabbed fallen branches from the ornamental trees. Piptic, I need you to help direct people. Kayla said, while building a framework you can still move, right? Yes, but I am fracturing. Piptic's voice was full of pain. I know, and we'll get you warm soon, Kayla. Worked faster. Zarkoth, can you hear me? A grinding sound emerged from the frozen. Krath warrior, if you can move at all, I need you in the center where we're building shelter. Slowly, with obvious effort, Zarkoth began moving. Kayla directed students to gather materials: broad leaves from tropical plants, fallen branches, and vines. A thermal blanket from an emergency kit on the wall. Within 15 minutes, she had constructed a basic shelter. It wasn't pretty, but it would work. Everyone inside, she ordered, huddle together and share body heat. Body heat? Someone asked in confusion. Yeah, and larger beings on the outside, smaller ones toward the center. Kayla positioned them like she was arranging a team photo. Piptic, you're in the very middle. The crystallid settled into the center of the group. Kayla could still hear the fracturing sounds, but they were slower now. What about fire? Student asked. You said humans use fire not inside an enclosed shelter. Kayla said firmly, that's how you get carbon monoxide poisoning. More rain fell and the temperature continued to drop, but inside the shelter, 15 students huddled together and shared warmth. Kayla moved around the outside, adjusting the structure and reassuring people. She covered gaps with leaves and reinforced weak points with vines. You have done this before, Zarkoth observed as his exoskeleton slowly unlocked. Girl Scout camp, Kayla said. We learned emergency shelter building when IW. Kayla couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her quarters while questions circled through her mind like sharks. Why hadn't Earth been properly classified? How had the survey 300 years ago gotten it so wrong? Who was responsible for the paperwork? At 0300 station time, she gave up on sleep and sent messages to Piptic, and Zarkathoth replied within minutes. Met in one of the Academy's late-night study rooms where the lighting was dim and privacy fields could be activated. This is highly irregular, Piptic chimed softly while settling onto a desk. But I confess I have been troubled by the same questions. Have I? Zarkoth admitted the Krath value honor and truth above all else in this situation. Reeks of deception. Kayla pulled up the official survey data on Earth. The report was 300 cycles old and marked as complete. Look at this. She pointed to sections of the report they surveyed from orbit, noted the presence of primitive sapients, and classified us as Class 6 with limited development potential. but they should have detected the environmental hazards. Piptic S crystals pulsed with thought. Atmospheric composition alone would indicate danger unless they didn't want to, Zarkath suggested. Darkly, what do you mean? Access the Galactic Council's classification database, the Krath warrior said. I have military clearance that should allow deeper searching. Piptic interfaced with the Academy's network using crystalline tendrils that Kayla had never seen before. Data streams flowed across multiple displays there. Piptic highlighted a section buried in administrative notes. Earth was flagged for reclassification review 17 separate times over the past 3 centuries. 17 times. Kayla felt anger building, and nothing happened. Each review was closed with the same notation. Piptic read, allowed pending council. Approval under quarantine protocol, Tau. What's quarantine protocol, Tau? Kayla had never heard of its Archithes. Eyes glowed brighter with what might have been recognition. I have seen that designation once before. He said slowly during classified briefings about restricted worlds. Can you access the protocol details? Not without triggering security alerts. Zarkath admitted, but I know someone who might help. 20 minutes later, Professor Velkath arrived looking as tired as Kayla felt. The professor's tentacles moved sluggishly until they saw the data displays. Then they snapped to full alertness where, did you find this? Velkath demanded. Buried in the public database, Piptic said, though not easy to locate. Professor Velkath examined the data with increasing agitation. I suspected something was irregular with your classification student Kayla. But this, they gestured at the screens. This is deliberately obscured. What is quarantine protocol, Tau? Kayla asked. Directly. Vith was silent for a long moment. It is a council directive established approximately 400 cycles ago. The professor finally said, designed to protect valuable species from exploitation. Protect how? By hiding them. Velkath's tentacles curled with what looked like shame. Worlds with exceptional characteristics are sometimes classified below their actual danger level to prevent corporate interests in military powers from targeting them. Kayla felt like the floor had dropped away beneath her. You're saying the council knew Earth was a death world and deliberately hid it? Not to harm humanity? Velkath said quickly, but allegedly to protect you from those who would exploit Deathworlders. Exploit how? Zarkath's voice had gone. Dangerous Deathworlders are valuable, the professor explained reluctantly. Their resilience makes them targets for forced labor, genetic harvesting, military conscription, and worse. So instead of protecting us through proper channels, Kayla's voice was shaking, they just pretended we didn't exist. They denied you contact, trade advancement, and truth. Piptic chimed with unusual force. This is not protection, and this is imprisonment. Kayla stood and paced the small room. Her mind raced through implications. How many scientific advances had humanity missed? How many humans had died from diseases that galactic medicine could have cured? How much had been stolen from her entire species? We need more information, she said finally. We need to know who approved this and why they're still hiding it. That information will be heavily restricted, Velkath warned then. We find another way. Kayla looked at her unlikely team. Piptic, can you search for related communications or documents? I can attempt it, the crystallid said, though it may take time. Zarkath, can you reach out to your military contacts quietly? The Krath nodded, but if this conspiracy reaches high enough, we may all be in danger. Good thing I'm from a death world then, Kayla tried to smile. Over the next week, they worked in secret. Piptic discovered cryptid communications between council members discussing Earth's Staterzerkoth's watch. Contacts revealed that similar protocols existed for at least 6 other worlds. Professor Velkath provided academic cover and access to restricted archives. What they found was worse than Kayla had imagined. Earth's classification wasn't just wrong, it was specifically maintained to keep humanity isolated and controllable. The council claimed it was benevolent protection, but the communications revealed a different truth several council members were terrified of. What Deathworlders might do if given equal access to galactic civilization. They feared competition, they feared being displaced, they feared becoming irrelevant. Look at this message. Piptic displayed a communication dated 50 cycles ago. It's from Ambassador the Xol of the Vrin Collective. Kayla read the translated text and felt cold fury spreading through her chest. message argued that keeping Earth quarantined was necessary for galactic stability, that humans were too aggressive too resilient to adaptable, that allowing them into civilization would disrupt existing power structures. Dexal Zarkath growled. He sits on the Council's Security Committee, and his people come from a class 9 world. He sees humans as competition. Kayla understood now we're from a harsher world, which means we might be tougher, and he can't allow that. This goes beyond bureaucratic error, Velkith said grimly. This is deliberate suppression of an entire species for political advantage. What do we do? Kayla asked. We expose it, Piptic chimed with crystalline determination. Transparency is sacred in my culture, and this deception must end. Exposure could put Earth at risk, Zarkoth warned. If Dixal and his allies feel threatened, they may act against humanity directly. And keeping quiet means humanity stays isolated forever. Kayla countered, we didn't ask for this, and we deserve the truth. They debated options through the night. Choice came with terrible risks. The conspiracy and potentially make humanity a target, stay silent, and let the lies continue, find evidence of crimes and force the Council's hand. There may be another way, Professor Velkith said thoughtfully. If we can prove that the current classification actively harms both humanity and galactic interests, the Council would be forced to act. How do we prove that? Velkith gestured at Kayla. You are living proof that humans can integrate successfully in your actions during the Biodome incident. Demonstrated that Deathworlders can be assets rather than threats. One incident isn't enough, Kayla protested. Then we create more opportunities. Velka's tentacles moved with decisive energy. We document everything, and we build an irrefutable case, but before they could finalize their plans, the situation exploded. Kayla was summoned to a combat training exercise standard protocol for all students in their second month. She arrived at the training center to find Ambassador Thexal waiting. The Vryn was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with scales that gleamed like oil and eyes that burned with predatory intelligence. Student Kayla Chen. Dixal's voice was smooth and cold. I have been eager to observe human capabilities, first-hand warning. Bells rang in Kayla's mind. Ambassador. She kept her voice neutral. I wasn't aware the Council observed routine training. I make exceptions for exceptional cases. Exel smiled with too many teeth. Shall we begin? The training scenario was supposed to be a simple obstacle course, but as Kayla entered the simulation chamber, she realized the settings had been altered. The obstacles were too difficult, the hazards too extreme. This wasn't training, this was an assassination attempt disguised as an accident. Kayla's Deathworld instincts kicked into overdrive. She analyzed the environment with desperate speed, identified the real threats versus the decoys calculated her path through the chaos end. Then she moved in with the reckless aggression that Saul expected, but with precise tactical thinking, she avoided the obvious traps, used environmental features to her advantage. It's demonstrated control and restraint even when threatened. When a simulated predator attacked, she didn't kill its, redirected it toward a barrier, and escaped while it was confused. When obstacles required strength, she used leverage and physics. Instead of brute force, when speed was needed, she paced herself for endurance rather than sprinting by. The time she completed the course, she was exhausted, but she was alive. And more importantly, the observers had seen everything. Celeste's expression was cold fury. Impressive, he said, though the word sounded like a curse. Though I wonder how you would perform against a real threat. I hope I never have to find out. Kayla met his eyes steadily. I came here to learn, not to fight. The council chamber was even more impressive than Kayla had imagined it. Rose like a cathedral of light and crystal, with seats arranged in ascending rings that seemed to touch the distant. Ceiling beings from hundreds of species filled those seats there. Collective attention focused on the small platform at the center where Kayla stood. Alondine Harmuth had tried to prepare her. Professor Velkith had coached her on Protocalpipidic, and Zarkath waited in the observation gallery above, but nothing could truly prepare someone for standing before the Galactic Council. This hearing is convened. A voice resonated through the chamber to address the classification status of the planet designated Earth and the species known as humanity. Ambassador Vixal rose from his seat in the prosecution section. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights, and his smile was predatory. Honorable council members. He began smoothly. We are here because of a dangerous oversight in a Class 12 Deathworld. Has gone unmonitored for 300 cycles. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The human species evolved in conditions of extreme hostility. The Exal continued an examination of their biology reveals adaptations for violence and aggression. He pulled up holographic displays, human anatomy with muscles and skeletal structure. Highlighted historical footage of human conflicts data on human physical capabilities. They are persistence predators. Exal's voice grew more intense, capable of pursuing prey for days without rest, and their history is marked by constant warfare and territorial expansion. More images appear, ancient, battles modern. Military technology, humans engaged in combat sports, they find violence entertaining. The ambassador gestured dramatically. They train their young in combat techniques disguised as games, and they deliberately expose themselves to danger for recreation. Kayla watched him build his case with growing anger. Everything he said was technically true, but it was also completely missing the point. Furthermore, Exal's eyes locked onto Kayla. Recent events have demonstrated that humans are unstable, enduring a minor environmental fluctuation. This human assumed control of other students without authorization. I was helping them, Kayla called out, before she could stop herself. Silence, a council elder commanded. You will have your opportunity to speak. Saul smiled. The human species represents a clear threat to galactic stability. He concluded, I propose that Earth be placed under formal quarantine with no contact permitted for a minimum of 1,000 cycles. The chamber erupted in debate. Some council members agreed. Loudly others argued just as forcefully. Kayla felt her heart sinking. Then Professor Velkith stood to speak. Honorable Council. I represent the academic perspective on this matter. Velkith's tentacles moved with formal precision. And I have observed human student Kayla Chen extensively over the past lunar cycle. The chamber quieted. Ambassador, the Sol presents humanity as violent aggressors. Velkith continued. But I have witnessed something quite different. And yes, humans are resilient. And yes, they are capable of violence, but these traits are not unique to them. The professor pulled up new data. The Krath evolved on a Class 9 world and are known for military prowess, yet we do not quarantine them. Vivrin. Velkith gestured toward Exal, come from a Class 9 world and have a history of territorial expansion, yet they sit on this council. What makes humans different is not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for cooperation. Despite hardship, Velkith showed footage from the Biodome incident, Kayla organizing the students' building. Shelter protecting the vulnerable when crisis occurred. This human did not attack or flee, and she protected beings who had feared her moments before. And this is the behavior we should encourage, not suppress. More council members began speaking. The debate grew heated. Then Dean Harmuth stood. If I may address the council. The ancient Archon's voice carried weight that silenced the chamber. I have reviewed the full history of Earth's classification. Kayla held her breath. The original survey was incomplete and subsequent review requests were blocked under quarantine protocol. Talmor murmurs. This protocol was designed to protect valuable species from exploitation. Harmuth continued, but in this case it has been used to suppress a species that might compete with existing power structures. This XLS scales darkened. That is a serious accusation, Dean. It is a factual statement, Ambassador Harmuth. Displayed the encrypted communications that Piptic had found your own messages. Reveal concerns about human competition rather than human danger. The chamber exploded. Council members demanded explanation. Security personnel moved toward the Xolth ambassador's expression twisted with fury. You dare to accuse me of conspiracy? He snarled. I acted to protect the galaxy from a species of aggressive predators. You acted to protect your own political position, Harmuth said calmly. And in doing so, you denied an entire species their rightful place in galactic civilization. Enough. The Chief Council Elder's voice cut through the chaos. We will hear from the human directly. All attention turned back to Kayla Shea, stepped forward with her heart pounding. Honorable Council, she began and then stopped. She had prepared a formal speech, practiced diplomatic language, but looking at the assembled beings, she realized that wasn't what they needed to hear. "I'm 18 years old," she said simply. "I grew up in Texas on a planet I didn't know was considered deadly, and I played soccer and went camping and ate spicy food and did all the normal things kids do." She saw some council members leaning forward. "When I got here, everyone was terrified of me because Earth is a Class 12 death world. But you know what?" Kayla felt her voice strengthening. "Earth isn't deadly to us, and its home ambassador, the Exal, says, we're violent, and yes. Humans have fought wars, but we've also created art and music and poetry. And we've built hospitals to heal the sick and schools to teach the young." She pulled up images of Earth, not the violent footage that Exal had shown, but images of beauty, the northern lights, coral reefs, forests, and mountain cities lit up at night. He says, "We're persistence predators like it's a bad thing, but you know what persistence means?" Kayla looked around the chamber. "It means we don't give up, and it means when something is hard we keep trying. It means when our friends are in danger we don't run away." She showed the biodome footage again. "I helped those students because on Earth, we learned that strength isn't. It's just about being tough, and it's about protecting people who need protection." Her voice grew passionate. "You call us Deathworlders like it's a curse, but we learn to sing in storms, and we learn to find beauty in struggle. And we learn to protect the weak because we remember being prey. If that makes us dangerous, then I'm asking, dangerous to whom?" Silence filled the chamber. "Dangerous to tyrants?" Kayla continued, "To people who would exploit the vulnerable. Those who think might makes right." She turned to face the Exal directly. "Because if that's what you're afraid of, Ambassador, then maybe you should be." The ambassador's expression was pure hatred. "You prove my point, human," he hissed. "You are aggressive and confrontational." "No," Kayla said quietly, "I'm just honest." Before anyone could respond, Exal moved. He leaped from his seat with predatory speed, crossed the chamber floor in seconds, lunged toward Kayla with claws. "Extended security personnel," shouted the chamber. Erupted in chaos. But Kayla was ready. She had known this might happen. Deathworld instincts had been screaming warnings since. Dexel started speaking. She dodged his first strike, used his momentum against him, redirected rather than blocked one. He came at her again. She didn't attack. She defended, moved with precision, demonstrated control. "Fight me," Dexel snarled. "Show them what you really are." No, Kayla stayed just out of reach. "I'm not here to fight, coward." "Smart," she countered. He lunged. Again this time, she was ready. She caught his arm at the joint, used leverage and his own weight brought him down without injury, then stepped back with hands raised. "I could hurt you," she said clearly enough for everyone to hear, "but I won't. And that's the difference between us." Security finally reached them. They restrained. That's all. While he struggled and cursed, Kayla stood breathing hard but uninjured. The chief council elder rose slowly. "We have witnessed enough," the elder said with grave authority. "Ambassador Thixal, you are removed from this council pending investigation into your conspiracy and assault charges." Thixal was dragged from the chamber, still shouting threats. The elder turned to Kayla. "Human Kayla Chen, you have demonstrated precisely what humanity is capable of, and you had opportunity to seriously harm a council member and chose restraint." "Yes, elder." "The council will now vote on Earth's status." The next hour passed. In a blurt, council members spoke, some in favor of humanity, some still fearful. The vote was called. Kayla watched the holographic display as votes were tallied: green for acceptance, red for quarantine. The lights flickered and counted one by one. When the final tally appeared, the chamber fell silent. "Provisional acceptance had won barely, but it had won. The council has decided," the chief elder announced. "Earth will be granted provisional membership in the galactic community, and humanity will be contacted, informed, and offered the choice to join." Kayla felt tears streaming down her face. "Furthermore," the elder continued, "Kayla Chen, you are appointed as Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council.